Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 20 of the Avengers, written by Jed MacKay. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So, with that said, this issue opens in Zone 14 as two men ran for their lives because, according to one of them, they have entered Loyalist territory due to the Loyalists being in control of all the food dispensers in their current zone. Now, from their perspective, it's been 2 years since they had an uprising and escaped from their cells, but just because they are free now doesn't mean that they aren't still being hunted, because the Loyalists were dead set on locking them back up. So, as the two rebels continued to make their escape, one of them tripped and fell upon the floor and was moments away from getting caught until the Black Panther arrived on the scene with his spear in hand. And with no hesitation, the Black Panther went to town on the Loyalist soldiers and jumped from person to person, systematically taking everyone out with little to no effort. Now, as he was doing this, we get a narration saying, "The thing we have to understand is before the uprising there was one power in their world, and that power was Meridian Diadem. She abducted them all and made them her prisoners. Some of them cracked and gave in, and others became trustees, or better known as guards, janissaries, and wardens. And as for the rest, they stayed locked up in their cells, pens, and dungeons. Until one day, there was an uprising and Meridian Diadem went silent, and because of that, there was no one to give the trustees their orders, no one to run the prisons, and no one in charge. And because of that vulnerability, that was when they chose to fight back. Now within this world, this great rebellion took place over 2 years ago, but to us, it was only a few months back since the Avengers took out Meridian Diadem and the Ashen combined. So with it made clear that time moves differently there, the Black Panther asked if the trustees was still active, to which the man replied by saying, there used to be only one power in their world, but now there are two. They are the Loyalists, the trustees, and anyone else who still worships Meridian Diadem in her absence, and then there are the divided gangs. Now when the uprising first kicked off they could have won due to there being more of them than guards, and on top of that, they still wasn't used to thinking without Meridian Diadem's commands. But their shared anger couldn't hold the prisoners together for long, because they eventually broke into fractions, with each being run by their own boss. Now due to this separation, each boss started to fight each other for control instead of fighting the Loyalist. Now this break in combat gave the Loyalists the time they needed to fortify their defenses and take control of critical infrastructure like the food dispensers and things like that. Now with that recap and breakdown of their world explained, we then fast forward to the next day as the Black Panther and the two men made their way over a decaying bridge. And as they walked, one of the men asked if it was the Black Panther alongside the Avengers who put Meridian into stasis. To which the Panther said yes alongside the rest of her Ashen combined, and then he went on to inform them that the Impossible City has also joined them, which led him here. For he came here to see what they could do to help them get free and maybe return home. Now to the Panther's dismay, that idea was cut short, as the man said he could forget that idea. Because the reason why they are all fighting for control and never tried to escape was because they can no longer leave. Because every prisoner that was captured was biologically altered to be dependent on their planet biome, which means the outside world would kill them in weeks. So basically this is the only place where they can live and the only place they could have. So with little options left to pursue, the Black Panther declared that the path ahead is now made clear, because if this is the only place they could call home, then they will make it a place worth calling home. Now despite the Black Panther's big words, the two men were still a little skeptical about the how. Because the two men were just scavengers, not warriors, and the Panther was just one person. But see, the Panther wasn't just one person, for he was the one person who was born for this, the one person trained from birth by the very best for this. Which is why there is only ever one Black Panther of Wakanda, and the king would happily show them why. And so he did, for on the next page, we see our boy walking solo up to the gates of the Ward 3 gang encampment, and when he gets there, he was immediately pressed by the guards at the front gate. The two men asked the king about who he was and what gang he pledged his allegiances to. To which the king introduced himself and said they could call him the Black Panther, and then went on to say that they were mistaken, for he wasn't entering their gang territory, but rather this was his territory, and he was there to collect their oaths of allegiances so they might get to work. Now this didn't sit well with the guards because they tried to lay hands on the king, but was quickly taken out, like the Loyalist before them. So with both guards defeated, the king just walked right into the camp and thought to himself if he could remember the lessons he was taught by the griots. Now the first lesson was called the Song of Challenge, which required him to make his presence known. And the trick to achieve that is to find a balance, for he must have the strength of a lion, the mockery to laugh like a hyena, he must be powerful enough to make his challenge real, he must be cruel enough to go to response of his wishes. And just as predicted, the leader of the gang exited his tent and confronted the king. So, with the Titan before him, the Black Panther went on to say he had come to raise his gang up in his love and mercy, for his followers are wasted upon him. But under the king's spear, they will be made true warriors and granted the gift and honor of being the first of his fighters. Now to this, the gang leader just replied by saying what his gang needs from a new leader because he has done enough by keeping them fed. Now to this, the king replied by saying he is subjugating the weak, the scavengers, which makes him no better than the Loyalists. In fact, the Panther called him worse than the Loyalists because they were able to also feed them, and they are able to fight for what they believed in. Because after all, that is why the Loyalist controls the food dispensers and their zone, and he just steals from scavengers. So with the leader's ego challenged, he immediately went on the attack, which was exactly what the Panther planned, because he had successfully made him look foolish before his gang. But see, that wasn't all he did, for he also sown doubt in the minds of his followers, so now he has no options but to put him down himself. Now the fight itself must serve as one final act of theater, because the goal here is not to win the fight, it is to win the hearts of the gang, for the gang boss is a prop, an aid to a performance, and nothing more. So with the boss being a canvas, the king chose to paint it in violence, for that was the language of the gang. And in order to make use of them, he must speak to them in their language and defeat their former boss. So with the fight over and the goal achieved, we then jump back to the Panther talking with the two men they met at the beginning of the comic. And during their conversation, they congratulate him on winning his first gang of many, but despite their happiness, one of the men brings up a question about something that didn't make sense to him. And that was, why didn't the Black Panther bring the rest of the Avengers with him if they were able to take down the Ashen combined, because with his whole team, they could easily roll over the Loyalists in no time. To which the king replied by saying he is correct, but the true problem isn't the Loyalists, because if the Avengers removed the Loyalists tomorrow, then the people of this land would still be what they are, fractious gangs fighting and killing and exploiting one another. Because at the end of the day, they are all people who were stolen from hundreds of different worlds, and they have been subjected to terrible exploitation and trauma, but like it or not, they all are now one people. They are one people with one home in which they all must live, so in order to defeat the Loyalists and make this their home, the free gangs are going to have to come together under one spear. Now with that established, we fast forward to the day of the battle, at the base of this zone Loyalists. And when we get there, we get yet another narration from the king saying, he was raised from birth for this, to be the ultimate operative of his nation. His job was to find the weaknesses of his enemies, be they an individual or a nation itself, and break it apart. Now he is used to having the full resources of Wakanda, the most advanced nation in the world, at his disposal. But now he must start with nothing, and that is exhilarating. Now he has a challenge set out before him, to unite a people to topple their tyrants, to do right by a person who has had much wrong done to them. Following that, the king then went on to say, if he would have brought in the Avengers, then this would be a victory for just the Avengers. But see, the king wants this to be the first of many victories for the people of this world. The king wants these victories to belong to the people. For he have thought this through and planned a way out, as he was raised to do by the canniest and wisest of teachers. But there is also a part of him that questions his own moves. For he was born for this, but the kingdom he was born to defend has rejected him, so in the face of that, he must wonder if he is merely creating a new kingdom for himself. So with that said, on the last page of this issue, we see the king standing tall as his army cheers him on with his flag over his head. But anyway, if you want to stay in the loop about any individual storyline, then how about you hop over to the playlist section down below or in the link cards above to get all caught up on the Avengers runs. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.